on this exceptionally hot day. So we are not expecting any fire alarm. So if it does happen, we will need to leave the building, and we will be we need to meet by the bottom of the steps by the cathedral. We've all got water, hopefully, in front of us, and the fans around. Please feel free to move if you feel that there might be a better place for you to sit. There might be, I don't know, in your garden or on the fan, something like that. But if you do need to go and get more water, then please do. We are planning to have a quick sort of water break after item number 8, just so that we can make sure that everyone's still got enough water, and also to use the toilet if need be, because hopefully we're all hydrating ourselves so much that is also happening, and then we know that we're not going to keel over with dehydration. We have one substitution. So Councillor Rob Breyer has been substituted by Councillor Heather Mack, so thank you very much. And we welcome back Councillor Henry Michelin. Well, thank you very much for coming back to our CYP. So I think as a committee, can we note Councillor Galandris's contribution, and also Councillor Yassin Mohammed, who is now also our Lord Mayor. So this is our first committee meeting afterwards. Our committee happy to do that? Thank you. Can we officially record that? Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item agenda number 3, which are declarations of interest. So do the committee members have any declarations of interest related to any items on the agenda that they wish to declare? That's a no. Okay, thank you very much. And then item number 4, which is the minutes. So this was when we were in the youth zone, if you remember. So I'm going to assume that everybody has read the minutes. Are there any corrections or points that any member wishes to add to the official record? Okay. Are we happy to... do we have to note the minutes?
We have to get a seconder.
Yeah. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Katja. And then number 5 is the Chair's announcement. So I have got a few updates. So, as you may, if anyone that's on Strategy and Resources would have heard, the Trim Valley School, we've now had notification that we can deliver this at a local level, which is really good, because it means that it will be top of our list in a way that it will be one of many for the Department of Education, because they will be having numerous projects, obviously, across the country. So we're now at the point where education officers are meeting with local DFE, local DFE teams, and basically they will be having discussions about how much the Department of Education is going to give capital-wise in order for that school to go ahead. We've had notification of that. When that comes through, when we know and that those negotiations are over, then we can announce how much that will be. And then we will be in a position to get on with building that school and putting together the construction company. So that's really good news. The youth zone in South Bristol, some of you might have been there on Saturday, a few nods. Yep, so that's now officially open. And just in time for when the school holidays break up. So that's a really good, fantastic addition for young people, not just in the wards that it borders, but also much wider up into South Bristol. So that's a really good piece of work, and we wish them all the best. Okay, I think that's all the announcements that are worthy here. Thank you very much. Okay, so that takes us on to agenda item number 6, which is public forum. Right, so public forum, the questions and the statements have been published. I think they were published this morning. Answers have been published. They've been sent to those who sent them through. I have indication of one person that is going to come to speak to this first part of the public forum. Caroline Lee Smith. Okay, well, if Caroline comes in, maybe we can take it then. Yeah, okay. And also for this section was Joanna Booth, but it looks like... Okay, not attending. Okay, right, well, let's move on then. There is another section of public forum later on, so if they're there by then, we can catch up with those if they are late or just late on the bus or something. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 7, which is our usual committee update report. So this is our regular monitoring of some of the various key areas that this committee covers. So I'll hand over to Hannah Woodhead, the Executive Director of Children's and Education, to give us an introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So this is our usual update report in which we bring all of our regular performance data, which has come through our performance board. I mean, the main item this month is to talk about the SEND reform plan, which has been developed as part of the request from government to all local authorities to develop a SEND reform plan, and was submitted on the 19th of June, having gone through Strategy and Resources Committee and in discussion with this committee. So I'm going to hand to Vic to talk about that, which is appended to the papers, but also to talk about the education and skills data while he's at it. Thanks.
Thank you, Hannah. Yes, so in terms of the SEND reform plan, so the Department for Education and the Department for Health and Social Care wrote to every local authority nationally to request that they submit a local area SEND reform plan by the 19th of June, which passed last week. This followed the publication of the Schools White Paper in February 2026, and the National Reform Programme signals one of the most significant shifts in policy for at least a decade, and I think we're going back to the Children and Families Act in 2014 when EHCPs first came into place, when we've seen a change of this scale. And the stated direction of travel by government is towards stronger mainstream inclusion, earlier intervention, and a more graduated needs-led model of support. We've been working to quite a short time frame. We received our letter on the 9th of March to provide all of the detail needed to begin working on that plan, and submitted on time on the 19th of June. So for Bristol, the submission of the plan is both a national policy requirement, but also strategically and financially important. Approval of the plan is linked to access to the High Needs Stability Grant, which is intended to cover a substantial proportion, so 90% of the current deficit in this financial year, which equates to £98.3 million. And support the longer-term financial recovery. So plans approved in the first round after review by the DfE, and we're expecting to hear back in around September, early autumn, we're told, would be expected to receive payment from the autumn of 2026. Alongside that, a central feature of the reforms is the introduction of what's called the experts at hand model. This is intended to bring together multidisciplinary input from services such as educational psychologists, speech and language therapists, occupational therapists around schools, not to do assessment, but to support schools in building their capabilities and improving the ability of teachers to be able to support children in the classroom, and therefore promoting better inclusion. In Bristol, we're intending for this to be aligned to 11 clusters of schools across the city, and deploying experts depending on the level of need in specific areas as part of our wider prevention approach. The plan that we submitted on the 19th of June was developed through extensive engagement across the local area. In the short time we had, we managed to meet close to 300 stakeholders through workshops, challenge sessions and targeted engagement activity, and that included schools, governors, special educational needs coordinators in schools, early years leaders, post-16 providers, counsellors from the council, where we held a special briefing, health partners, parent care forum, and also importantly children and young people. And the key themes that came through from the engagement sessions included broad support for the reform, but concerns about the national funding, whether it's sufficient to deliver the capacity needed, a strong steer from across stakeholders to continue to build on the strategy that we launched in 2024 and the positive momentum that partners have seen through that. Requests for clear and more simpler joined-up services around schools, so seeking more of a single front door, easier access to navigate what can be quite a complex system. Welcomed experts at hand, particularly speech and language and mental health support, which are the two biggest areas of need in Bristol. And I think recognition that success will depend on better inclusion practice in schools and clear communication with families. Alongside this, Bristol continues to face significant pressures. We have seen a significant growth in the number of children we're supporting through an education, health and care plan. So over 6,000 as of today. Families tell us they still want to see more in terms of earlier help, more consistent mainstream inclusion, and smoother pathways through the system when they need support. And delays in assessment and diagnosis remain a significant concern, both in the health system, but also in the EHCNA backlog, which we'll be able to update on through the update report. So particularly in terms of neurodevelopmental pathways, and also concerns about inclusion practice being a variable and mixed across a diverse school system. So in terms of where we are now, the plan we've submitted has been very much focused on building on the strong foundations that we've created through the launch, since the launch of our SEND strategy. The Local Government Association identified our SEND strategy as best practice and shared that with other local authorities as a model, and our Department for Education advisor recognised our strategy and our progress as clear and ambitious, with wide stakeholder support from across our system. Our delivery is underpinned by mature and robust governance. We have an independent chair of our SEND board that holds us to account both in terms of challenge and support, and strong attendance from the partnership, both from schools and health system and other parts of the system as well. And 2 years into delivery of our 4-year plan, we've completed 61%, which has been really positive because it now creates the space for us to bring the reform planning activities now into that plan and divert our focus into that space. We're also investing in mainstream provision, so this committee here and both through the budget round through full council allocated £53.1 million to deliver 569 new places across the city by 2030. And as of today, 217 of those places have been delivered, with the remainder being monitored carefully, but at the moment on track. And we've also been investing in services such as education psychology alongside our SEND team to expand capacity in the teams and support schools more closely through our inclusive learning service, but also ensure that we are meeting and progressing towards clearing our backlog of assessments and delivering more timely support to families. So as of today, our backlog, the number of EHCP requests are the lowest in the southwest region, so we're getting a sense that the early intervention support that we are offering to schools is having an effect and is mitigating the rise in requests, whereas nationally the trend is growth of EHCP requests. And our EHCP output in terms of the number of plans that we have issued as a local authority in quarter four of the financial year, so closing in April, is the highest in the region and surpassing both the local and national average. And we are seeing our backlog come down and anticipate that we're on track to clear that backlog by the end of this calendar year, if not sooner. We are still monitoring timeliness. We know that's not where it needs to be at the moment. So year to date, 17% of EHCPs are within the 20-week timescale. That's an improvement on 7% from last year, and we expect that to continue to rise as the backlog comes down to more manageable levels as well. So our vision for the reform plan is that every child and young person with SEND learns, belongs and thrives in their local community, attending settings that are ready for them. And that's the key shift for us in terms of moving from a system where it's resource-driven and need-driven to a system where schools are building the capabilities for the children in their community, and they can anticipate more of that need as well. So just on the financials, at the end of 2025-6, the Council's deficit against the high needs block was £142 million. It's expected to grow to £152 million by the end of 26-7, before reducing in later years. And obviously the high needs stability grant of £98.3 million will go some way to bring that down, but it will still leave some residual liability, which could be subject to what's called the statutory override, which has meant that that deficit has been held against the schools grant and therefore nationally, but could potentially in March 2028 come back to the Council's general fund. And then just to wrap up, so the key considerations in terms of the reform work is that the stability grant, so the £98.3 million has been confirmed for 1 year. We expect it to come in years 2 and 3, but that hasn't been announced by government just yet, and that will help us substantially reduce the deficit down over the next 3 years. We are recognising a risk around workforce constraints. There are challenges in terms of the number of educational psychologists that are qualifying and speech and language therapists that are qualifying, rising demand. So the government's announcement is that the number of children with an education, health and care plan will rise from 5.3% to 7.7% before returning back down to current levels in 10 years. So there's a significant process to go through where we will continue to deliver our statutory duties whilst also implementing the reforms. And then I think recognising that all of these reforms and the work that we're doing will depend on parent carer confidence, both in our work as a local authority and tangible improvements in mainstream provision, where inclusion will be the key measure. So that covers the SEND reform plan. If helpful, I can touch on some of the other areas of the update report which sit outside of that. So in other areas, we've seen the number of children awaiting specialist provision decrease slightly to 247. That's very much linked to the new provision that's coming online, but we know there's much more to do to make sure all of those children have a place. The proportion of young people who are not in education, employment and training has reduced slightly by 0.2 percentage points between March and April to 5.9, but continues to track above the national average, but at a similar rate to where we were a year ago. And then the number of electively home educated children at the end of February has increased slightly, and again follows a similar national trend that we're seeing in terms of rising EHE, and we are looking at our services in terms of how we can support that cohort as well. The number of children missing education has increased slightly, but continues to be lower than it was last year, so it's approximately 100 children fewer missing education, so not on the school roll than a year ago. And key measure citywide, of course, attendance. So we will have a paper coming to committee in October following the attendance start and finish group that this committee set up. Overall this year, attendance has been similar to last year, which was a slight improvement on the year before, so 91.9% overall. That's still below the national average of 93.3%, and particularly in secondary is the area of focus there. So there's more that we'll be doing as a service in the new academic year, both through a campaign but also targeted work with that cohort as well. I'll stop there if that's helpful.
Thanks, Vic. And then just to complete the rest of the update plan, there were just a couple of things. Christine's mentioned the youth zone opening, and we are doing work in the north of Bristol, as well as in East Central. We've talked about the work in East Central before. We're doing some work in Avonmouth and Lawrence Weston on youth provision as well. So we're conscious of the conversation about spread and capacity. The other things that the report draws attention to, sort of policy-wise, we have put a proposal in across the region in response to the regional care cooperatives invitation. So that's looking at the commissioning of care across the southwest, potentially looking at the commissioning of care across the north of the southwest, across the sort of ICB, WECA footprint, and how do we work with our local authorities there. So we have put a bid in. We'll see whether the department accepts it, and obviously we'll continue to talk to to you as a committee about next steps from that link to the fostering hub reform. So we're trying to respond to both of those big social care reforms as well. The other bit nationally that made the news in the last couple of months was the Alan Milburn NEAT report, which drew attention to more than 1 million youth unemployed. And it was a piece of work that was commissioned by the Department for Work and Pensions, so it was coming at it very much from a sort of employer's perspective, and a big conversation across the combined authority and in Bristol about how do we not only support young people 16 to 18 who are NEET, as well as 18 to 25 who are not employed, and that's, as you know, a priority for the combined authority. Just in terms of the other side of the data that Vic spoke to, so the children's social care data in the report. Yes, sorry, can I speak a bit louder? Is that all right? The children's social care data in the report does continue to show strong performance, particularly on timeliness, repeat child protection cases. Child protection numbers overall are about there or thereabouts. We have seen a rise in children in care. We continue to see a rise in children in care. You can see that in the data. And we're looking at that, whether that's understanding the drivers of that, whether it's about children coming in or not, or children not sufficiently moving on to permanent solutions with families or with wider family networks. Continuing to implement the Families First national reforms, family group decision-making, family network practice. So continuing basically to build the capacity of the social care system to support families to both keep children safely but also to support children in care as special guardians and as foster carers, of course. And then lastly, I won't speak to children in care. We've got the corporate parenting report on the agenda, and I think that's, we've also got school readiness is also on the agenda, so we can take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Varney, and then Councillor Mitchell, and then anyone else. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Firstly, regarding the SEND reform plan, congratulations to the staff for getting that report together and getting off to the Department for Education ahead of schedule. I think that's an amazing piece of work. Obviously, we now have to hope that they accept it without the need for revision, and we start getting payments from the stability grant, hopefully from August, was it, the first payment? Autumn. If they do send it back with a desire to have revisions made, do we have how will that impact us? Will we need to have a contingency in place? Because that might mean we won't get the money we need in the autumn, and that might have to wait for some time. How will that affect us?
So the likely process is that it will be a delayed payment. So there'll be an opportunity for revisions and then a resubmission process. Based on the feedback we've had from our, so we've had 2 advisors from the Department for Education working with us, one more on the education focus and one more on the financial focus. Both have given us very positive feedback about our submission. So we are hopeful we will go through in tranche 1, but we do recognise that that will be put in the pack of all local authorities nationally. So, so hopefully we will get the funding in the autumn and approval to proceed. If not, it will be a delay, but I'm not sure how long that might be.
So the early indication is that hopefully we won't need to make revisions, and if there is a delay to payments, it won't affect the total amount of payment that we're getting. It would just be a delay to the start of this payment. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. The second question I had was on the regional care cooperative, which I think is obviously a really good idea and something we're all very keen to make sure that we limit the number of out-of-area placements. But just wanted to draw attention to an issue that arose in my ward, in Bristol West. So we noticed that there was an application for a house to be converted into a home for young people. And when we looked into it, the application was being made by Birmingham City Council. So that kind of undermines our ability, I guess, to make sure that we are finding properties to care, to make sure that our children are being cared in area. So I'm just wondering how we counteract that kind of difficulty, really.
I'll let Hannah talk about what happened locally, but there isn't, if Birmingham want to buy a house in Bristol and put their provider in there to run that, that's for them to do, and that's kind of, you know, how it is at the national level. I don't think Bristol will be buying any in Birmingham, though. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I became aware of it a couple of months ago, and we did, yeah. So do you want to talk about what planning did?
So, I mean, I think what we need to do is link up with the planning team, basically, so that we understand sort of what the... where, I mean, as you say, we can't necessarily stop it. We don't always know about it, as you know. So, and that's what we need, is we need the officers to continue to keep in touch with each other. The point of the regional care cooperatives is that we're sort of working at scale. So particularly across the South Gloss-Bristol border, there's a lot of children who are moving, who are placed in Bristol from South Gloss and the other way around. It would make sense for us to do that much more cohesively together, and that's the principle. But of course, we don't want Bristol to lose out in that process, which is why, and as a big authority, to be honest, we're pretty well placed to be able to drive that work. Heather might just want to...
Thank you. We have put a new process in place after that application came through between children, families and the planning department. So we're now notified of any application regarding a children's home that comes through planning. We will always provide feedback from a commissioning perspective on the sufficiency in that local area, what the need is, and whether we think there are risks to children and young people in that area, because we're assuming that they won't have local knowledge, and whether we have other vulnerable children placed in that locality. So I think we have a much more considered response now around planning applications. That doesn't mean that we can say no to them on that basis, but we're hopeful that it will mean that when other authorities or indeed private applicants are applying for planning for children's provision, and it needn't necessarily be a children's home, that they're able to do that in an informed and sensible way, and with a degree of local knowledge and sufficiency knowledge that we can bring as well.
Yeah, obviously we can't stop people from buying homes and putting in applications, but I think what it sounds as though you're doing is getting that communication in place. So I think that's probably the way forward, isn't it? We need to know what's going on, really, so that we can, yeah, have a say. Anyway, thank you very much.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's really encouraging to see the section about tackling the issue of education, employment, training with young people. My sister left university 2 years ago and has been looking for a job and can't get one. And it affects quite a lot of my constituents, as well as everyone else's in the city. I do note that the sort of zero NEET strategy or focus, working with the combined authority and other sort of regional leaders, is being discussed or taken up by the Economy and Skills Committee. Are we able to have an update at some stage from them brought to this committee, just so we can see how their work's getting on? And my second question relating to the same matter is, I was approached by one of my constituents who wants to set up a sort of employment or training fair in the local church for young people. So would it be okay to email you to get some pointers that I can give to her, so to ensure that it's successful?
Yes, so I think in terms of an update on NEETs, we had an update to this committee, I think about 6 months ago. So we're probably due another update from that service. So what I will do is share with you the update that we provided at that committee, so you've got the latest in that position. We can ask the team to do an update on the work that they're doing across those services. In terms of the provider, I'm sorry I couldn't hear you too clearly, but very happy for you to put them in contact with me if to share any information if that would be helpful.
I'm just going to update, so in relation to the NEET reduction stuff and WECA, so the youth guarantee, which was focused in the south, there was a governance board that was around that was focused in that particular area and with those providers. After the Milbourne report and after now that WECA's put its skills strategy out, we are going to basically establish a citywide NEET reduction or something that's called something like that to look wider than 17 and 18-year-olds, which was what the Youth Guarantee focused on. The Youth Guarantee will be a project within that, but we want to encompass basically across the whole of the city all of the kind of NEET work that's going on for children that are starting in the Key Stage 4 and moving all the way up to 25 with SEND from our perspective. And I'm going to suggest and I'm going to invite that we have cross-party representation on that. And I did have somebody in mind from your own party as to who might be interested in joining that. So that's the process that we're currently in the middle of, if you like, because there's a lot of stuff going on with the Department of Work of Pensions as well. So there's lots of different, some statutory, it's going to be some national statutory, some local statutory, some it will be our education providers, lots and lots of kind of different players that need to be brought together and to look at the city as a whole and that age range of young people as they're kind of moving into adulthood. So that is in the pipeline, if you like. Yeah. Any others, Shona?
Yeah, thanks. I've got a couple. I mean, it's great to see that some of the arrows are moving in the right direction and the progress is being made. I had a couple of clarifying questions. One was about the regional care cooperatives. Just if you could explain that a bit more. So there's the idea that Bristol would kind of take the lead on it, but that all the other local authorities nearby would also be able to feed in and buy in. And if so, what conversations have we been having with them, and are they supportive of us being, taking the lead on that locally?
Yes, so the guidance sets out that you have to do it as a regional grouping. We already have 14 local authorities in the southwest who work together on commissioning children's provision. We feel quite strongly that that's too big to kind of give us the sufficiency that we need. So we're working really closely with that group and smaller subsets within it on kind of what the best model might be within the region to take this forward. And we're looking particularly at the kind of WECA region and how we can make that work to better commission collectively.
And are they supportive of our proposal?
Yes.
Cool, good to check. Thank you. And then my second question was about the workshops that's been done around emotionally based school avoidance. So it talks about a mapping workshop being held to identify gaps and talk about more strategic response. Can someone give a bit more detail about that and what the next steps are for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, working with the ICB, we commissioned Bernardo's to meet with a group of young people to talk about losing learning. What they described was themes around behaviour policies in schools, feeling belonging in schools, trusted adults being absolutely key in terms of the support they receive. And in fact, there is a really helpful video which is on YouTube, which I'll share around the link for, which summarises, which is the young people speaking to camera, describing their experiences. So we've been meeting across the Bristol, North Somerset, South Gloss, with the ICB and have turned that into an action plan which will actually form part of our reform plan and be tracked through that. So it's now embedded in our work in that way. We will also in September be launching a new policy around emotion-based school avoidance, which we will likely rename from EBSA because we think the term potentially is unhelpful, and calling it more difficulty at school, difficulty attending school, as opposed to emotion-based school avoidance. So whilst it's the same cohort, actually thinking about what are those difficulties and how can we unblock those. So that will launch in September as well, alongside that.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, that sounds like an interesting shift from sort of more like a, hopefully away from a blaming attitude of blaming the children or parents for the avoidance and looking at the difficulties. Okay, thank you. And then my last question was, I had 3 things that, it might be cheeky to ask for 3, but 3 things that I wondered whether could be added to the performance indicators that come up regularly. So one was about the use of agency workers, because I know that's really low at the minute, which is great. I'd love to keep tracking that and check that it stays low. Second one was about family network meetings, because I know we've done a lot of work around that, and I'd love if we could get to a stage where we can track how, like, what percentage of cases that's offered in. Obviously, it wouldn't be suitable in every single case, but that would be, I think, hopefully really helpful to see. And the third one, obviously, one of my favourite things is life story work, and seeing, you know, what rates are we able to make sure that that's offered in every single case, if that's suitable, sort of what's a suitable target for that. So, yeah, I don't know how feasible that is, but those are 3 things I'd love to be added to the trackers.
I mean, just to say, so we've got some really good data. We have got some really good data. It doesn't always tell us what we wanted to tell us, but and I think certainly on agency workers and family network meetings, those are 2 things that we're definitely tracking. Tracking on life story, I'm less clear on, but we could bring some examples, or we could look at the QA of that work.
We can definitely bring something on Life Story, but I don't know that we are able to pull the data automatically yet.
No, that's fine. I appreciate we might not be at the stage we can do that right now, but I'd love if, like, in a year or so, we were at the stage where we were able to track that, and even
Absolutely.
if it's, you know, even if we're not offering it, even in 50% of cases, to sort of know where we're at with that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, that does come to, we do look at that in corporate parenting, so it's available. Can I just to clarify the agency workers, are you talking about the social work and the social care teams, or do you want it wider than that, or any employee, I suppose, that works for the council, as opposed to, I'm thinking it would be almost impossible for us to do that in the education sector.
No, I'm thinking agency social workers, because that's sort of, we're noticing that we've got really good rates of that, and we're not relying on too much, and I'd like to sort of check that we stay on top of that.
Oh, right, and make sure it doesn't start slipping. Yeah, okay, yeah, no, I understand. Councillor Collins.
Yeah, I got a maths question again. So the maths question this time is on page 26. With the education skills, 94 requests for EHCNAs. There were 94 requests. But then number of children awaiting needs assessment in the little box has dropped down from 1,317 to 1,146, which is a difference of 171 over that time period. But does that include the 94 additional requests that came in April?
Councillor Collar, I think you're looking at a different page number. We can't find the page. Have you got the whole of the papers?
CYPPC update report, 26, sorry.
Yeah.
Is it 26?
Is it in the data?
That one. No, not that one. Yeah, that one.
Right, okay. Which is page,
The bundle page number is different.
Yeah, the bundle page number. I think what we're looking at is page 5 of the separated out.
Yeah, no, page 5 would be good.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, it's educating skills number 14. So it's just seeing the numbers there, and I wanted to know if it included the additional 94 requests, because it dropped down from 1,317 to 1,146, which is 171. But do I add the 94 requests onto that so that?
So does the 1146?
Yes. Yes. Additional requests that they had in April. So if I added the 94, it pushes that number actually above the 1146.
Yep.
Thank
I've got
you.
It. It's almost a maths GCSE, councillor, I think. So the 94 is already included in that
Right.
figure. So I think if it's still up there, the dark blue line that is coming down
Yes.
is the 2026 numbers of live assessments that are coming down. So as at the date of the report, it was 1146 in live assessments. That's come down to just above 1,000 actually. So at the next committee, you'll see that likely tip below 1,000.
So it'll be dropping again.
So the 94 is already included. And what we've seen in Bristol is the level of requests for assessment from schools has actually come down to the lowest in the southwest. And our output is, in terms of the number of plans we're issuing, is the highest in the southwest. So that's why we're seeing the backlog come down quite significantly and is in line with the plan that we set out to recover that
We'll
backlog.
still be seeing a downward curve,
Yeah, exactly.
which is a positive thing.
Exactly right, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, has anybody else got any questions or comments on this paper? Okay, we are asked to note as usual then. Okay, thank you very much. And I think we should take the next item because I think it'll be quite quick, and then maybe we take 5 minutes in case people need to get a drink or whatever, or just get up and walk around a bit because it's just so warm. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Ashley to take us through the annual business report that went to full council. Thanks.
Yeah. Hi there. So this report is just a procedural report for noting. It notes the membership in terms of reference for the Children and Young People Policy Committee for 26-27. At the annual full council meeting held on the 12th of May 26, Councillor Christine Townsend was appointed as the chair, and Councillor Catcher-Hornchin was appointed as the vice chair of the Children and Young People Policy Committee. At the annual full council meeting held on the 12th of May, the following members were appointed to serve on the committee for 26-27. Councillor Christine Townsend, Councillor Catcher-Hornchin, Councillor Shona Gemfrey, Councillor Rob Breyer, Councillor Ellie Freeman, Councillor Kerry Bales, Councillor Susan Collar, Councillor Andrew Varney, Councillor Henry Michelet. The meeting dates are as follows: Thursday the 10th of September, the 15th of October, 26th of November, 21st of January, the 4th of March and the 6th of May. And finally, the terms of reference and specific functions of this committee can be seen within the report. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, so we're asked to note that report. Okay, so let's say, should we say 10 to 6 so that we can fill up our water bottles and whatever we might need to do. Okay, yeah, okay, thanks. Oh, right. Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't. Okay, we'll wait. So moving on to agenda item number 9, which is the corporate parenting panel report to full council. Is Heather? So Heather Story to introduce the paper. Thank you.
Okay, so this report is an update from the corporate parenting panel on the progress against delivering the strategy and the statutory responsibilities. You'll remember that the strategy was agreed in July 2024. And there's been lots of progress since you last heard. In particular, again, in January, you approved the Immigration Support Pledge, which was signed off here. And that has been, we've had loads of really great progress against delivering that. And also the Care Leaver Covenant membership, which was confirmed here in January as well. The project team referencing that is taking responsibility for overseeing its successful incorporation into council business and promoting opportunities. We've also, you spoke a little bit about life story work earlier, and it's through the corporate parenting strategy that we're really progressing that work. It's a therapeutic process that helps children in care to understand their personal history and identity, and the practice guidance around that has now been signed off and updated, which was the combination of a lot of activity, including monthly life story workshops, drop-ins for staff, and a lot of training for practitioners as well. So hopefully you can see there's been a fair amount of progress against the strategy, and you're just being asked to note this report and the progress that's been achieved.
Okay, any questions or comments about this? I'm just looking at Councillor Collar in case you wanted to add anything as Vice Chair. Okay, no, right. Katya, Shona, Andrew, and then indicate if you want to ask.
Thank you very much for the report. It was really good, and it's so good to see there's so much positive work going on in this particular field. It's quite sad, really, that we have even more children going into care now rather than less, but that's, I guess, a sign of the times. The questions I wanted to, or some more like comments I wanted to say are around fostering sufficiency, something that's really important to all of us. And again, around children's homes again, because it feels like some of the children are away from Bristol or in a private home because there's not enough foster carers, not because they need a children's home here. And I do note that there's some really good work going on, what with the building, the allowing to expand your home for foster carers and some other ones. And I did ask you this before, of many cities in Britain must be having the same issues with foster caring. Are we talking to them about different ideas of how we could either get more foster carers or try a different system that's as good as foster caring or nearly as good as foster caring? The Mockingbird one was the one I wanted to say was very good.
Yeah, so the reforms have come through from national government, kind of linked to the Families First reforms around fostering. There's nothing in them that we're not already doing in there. So it talked about the fostering capital programme in those reforms. It talked a lot about Mockingbird. That's activity that we've already got going on in Bristol. We think there probably is more we can do, though, to recruit more in-house foster carers, particularly looking at our rates and how we can kind of align them best to meet, to be the most competitive authority in the region, really. But then equally, we're looking at a regional fostering hub and how we can work together to recruit more foster carers. So it's a real balance for us of making sure that we have as many foster carers as possible in the region, but equally that they want to come to Bristol and foster our children, particularly as the biggest city. So that's that work going on. And then the other part of it is the IFA foster carers, which is independent agency foster carers that we can access. So obviously we would always prefer to use our in-house foster carers where possible. But if we're not able to access foster care that way, then we go to our IFA foster carers. And we've had real challenges accessing that market recently. And for exactly those kinds of children that you're talking about, where we are struggling to get an in-house foster carer for them. We would prefer them to be in a family setting than to be in a children's home. And we would typically go to the IFA market for that need. And we're not having as much success there as we have done previously. So at the moment, we're exploring what commissioning approaches we could take to that market that would help us to get more IFA carers. I mean, that might be something like a block purchasing arrangement. It might be a particular relationship with a specific agency where we know that we can call on them for more specialist foster carers for children with higher needs so that we can keep them out of children's homes.
That all sounds really good, and this is really no criticism at all, because I could believe it's a really difficult area. The thing I was thinking about is what happens if you have, and this can happen in a city where the rents are so expensive. What did the latest reports come out, where the worst for private renting or something worse than London? And I was wondering whether there were some people that might be private renting at the moment that have dreams to become a foster carer, but because of their circumstances, they certainly can't afford to private rent an extra bedroom. If there's anything to help those kinds of people to steer them into the right direction, or do you have to have the capital of, or the lack of having a council house to start foster caring?
No, you can foster care in rented accommodation, but you're right that the barrier to renting an additional room may put people off from foster caring. We are looking at that. We don't have a great solution yet, if I'm completely honest. Okay. I think it's something that we can look at through the rates conversation. Obviously, there isn't a capital route for that, for improving kind of rental accommodation to take
obviously
foster carers. But we could potentially look at it through the rates and how we do it that way.
Yeah, that could be something, because I'm sure there's quite a few people that would love to foster care, but due to the circumstances that they are in, especially younger people, they just don't have the capital to buy their own homes, let alone rent an extra room.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of questions. So one was about, I know we've got plans for recruiting more global majority carers, and obviously there's some already in the city. They do an amazing job, and obviously, you know, it is possible. There's a lot of carers who aren't from a child's ethnic background who are still able to provide great care, but we know that it is really important for some children, where possible, that they are with carers who share their own background, particularly if English isn't their first language or if they've got various cultural needs. What are our plans for recruiting more global majority carers? Like, what are steps are we taking to try and advertise in those communities?
I can't speak to the detail other than to say that we've got targeted campaigns going on specifically for the ethnic groups that we know where we know that we need the most carers in. I'm not exactly sure how those targeted campaigns work, but I can get back to you with more information on that. But we are absolutely targeting the groups where we know we have least sufficiency.
Great, thank you. Yeah, more detail would be really interesting. And then there was also a question about when we were going down to the delivery programme and the overall dashboard, and it was saying sort of building block 1.4. I'm looking at sort of page 76 of the whole pack. Building block 1.4, it says ensure care experienced children and young people are supported to express their views and that they're taking into account. But that step is paused, and I just wondered if we could have a bit more detail about why it's paused and when it will be unpaused. Page 76 of the overall pack, reference 1.4.
So the reason it's paused, well, it's marked as paused, is because the chair of the group, the participation group where that action is held, is off sick. We have, however, I think probably since this report was written, recruited cover to that group, though, and the group actually met yesterday. So they are progressing work around participation. I can have that updated.
Brilliant, thank you. And my final question was about, I think it was maybe last committee we talked about having a task and finish group around out-of-area placements and seeing what more we could do to tackle that. Where are we up to with getting that task and finish group off the ground?
So I think that we've got that in our plan for September, and happy to bring a sort of proposal terms of reference and work with the committee either to the September or the October meeting, depending, I guess, on people's availability. But it's definitely in our plan.
So the plan is to start it in September, October?
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
Councillor Varney?
Thank you, Chair. So just a quick question about the Care Leavers Hub. Obviously, it hasn't been open that long. It started last summer and there was an official launch in November. But I'm just wondering if we have any indication to gauge the impact that it might be having on care experienced children in terms of their employment, education or housing, what sort of benefit we're seeing. Or is it too early to measure? And indeed, are we hoping to measure those things?
Yes, we absolutely have plans to measure them. We've got kind of early indicators. We've had surveys. We've had kind of qualitative information from children and young people using the hub and their carers, as well as to the benefits that they're seeing from it. And we are collecting some data. We haven't pulled that all together yet into something that I can share with you, but we will be collecting it and bringing it back.
Okay, lovely. That's very, very loud. Yeah, so thank you very much for that, and hopefully we will get that data in the near future at some point. Just a quick comment. I really enjoyed my visit to the youth zone a couple of months ago. I think it was really fantastic to see that. And I'm just wondering, as a committee, if there is more value, a lot of value in going to some of the things that we're doing and seeing them firsthand. So, for example, going to the Care Leavers Hub, or going to some of the special days, the event days we have for foster carers. I think it might be interesting for us as a committee to, we don't have to go, but if we were invited, it might be quite nice to see what's going on firsthand around the city. And then also just finally congratulations to the officers who ran the 10K Great Bristol Run. I had the honour of sounding the klaxon together with Councillor Mack. We didn't run though, did we, Heather? But it was a really fantastic event and great that officers took part and raised money for the EPIC charity. So well done.
Councillor Mack.
Thank you, Chair. I used to be Vice Chair of Corporate Parenting, so this is a bit of a blast from the past, and I'm really glad to see this report and see the progress. I think one thing that I've definitely noticed over the last few years is Christine's ability to champion our corporate parenting role to other members and across the council, and I think it's really ingrained in people's heads and considered across all portfolios now, and I think that that's an important part of the work that corporate parenting is doing. I was really interested by the conversation about foster caring and private renting, because yes, there is certainly a struggle in Bristol. So I actually was a foster carer and a private renter, but that is challenging, and I don't think there's many for that reason of space at a time when we're the most unaffordable renter city in the country. In terms of that recruitment challenge, I know that we are looking at all sorts of financial incentives. What can we do there? And I guess there's a few questions of like just checking that we are really working with the existing carers, because I think finance is part of it, but is there also extra, and I'm probably talking a little bit from experience, but just making sure that all of the support from the team, the external support, external visitors, and actually that point of sort of independent visitors and culturally appropriate visitors, because I think it's going to be an uphill, we're a long way off having the global majority carers that would represent our cohort of children in care, but are we doing everything that we can do so that everyone does have the sort of the cultural support or the appropriate independent visitors for those that are not necessarily entirely represented by their actual carers?
I think you're absolutely right, and foster carers tell us that they're not motivated by money, and I think we know that about our foster carers, that isn't why they do it. And therefore, it's absolutely critical that we get all of the right support around them. The Mockingbird model is our kind of key mechanism for that, and creating kind of hubs and peer support networks that are also appropriately supported by ourselves and external agencies where necessary. And that does include a strand particularly on kind of cultural support. And we have, at times, kind of brought that in to make sure that we can get something that is specific enough. We try to do that ourselves, so that isn't always possible, but we have, where it's been really critical to a child's progress, and made sure that that's in place.
Councillor Collar and then Councillor Freeman.
Yes, so mine was just, I've got to find it again now because I've lost it.
Not mathematics, I hope.
No, because page 55, evidence base. Number 2, councillor engagement and support is crucial to the strategy delivery. As to achieve good outcomes, the work needs to be embedded widely. Now, as a corporate parent, I'm asking that people understand that we're not just talking about councillors within corporate parenting, or even just within adult children and young people's committee, but it's also pushed out to every councillor across the whole strategy and everything that goes on, that it's all about housing and about environment and about health and stuff like that. And I just want that to be made quite clear that it is it's not just about the people sitting in this room or in the corporate parent room, it's about people across the whole organisation, across the councillors as well, which I just think is a really important thing to note. And to clarify that evidence, when we work together, the outcomes for children are better, because when it's just corporate parenting, children's services, the outcomes for children are poorer. So I think to clarify how important it is for everybody from all elements of the council are on board when it comes to our children that are in care. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, completely agree, and I don't think we could say it enough. And when we think we've said it enough, we need to start saying it again, because there will be different people and people forget, and you know there's a lot of things that happen in one day, let alone. But yeah, corporate parent is every elected member and every employee of Bristol City Council. Yeah, Councillor Freeman.
Thank you. Just going back to Andrew's question about the Care Leaver Hub. I know somebody who is making use of that hub loads and really appreciates it. And she's over 25, so a lot of the support is dropping away. But the great thing about the hub is that she knows she can go there at any time, and she's actually using it for a job interview next week. So it's, you know, I think it's really valuable, and I love that, yeah, like I say, I think that dropping away at 25 is quite difficult. And I think for care leavers, I don't know what the stats are, but I know that a lot of them, their children are more likely to go into care, they're more likely to be neat, all that kind of stuff. So having something that is still there, I think is really important. And I went to one of the celebration events for the care experienced young people, which was really, I would totally recommend if you can get to one next year, because it was really, really special. It was really small. It was like a little talent show, and the people that performed really appreciated us being there, even though there was only a small number of us. But being at Bristol Beacon was like a massive thing for them, so it was really special.
Any more comments or questions about that, Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the comments that have been made about the celebration events and other key events that are put on. As Lord Mayor, I attended a Foster Carers Fun Day, which was really, really good. I took part in various competitions against 5- and 6-year-olds and lost in every single one, including the paper airplane competition, and attended a pantomime at the Bristol Beacon. So it's really good that our key partners, you know, theatres and other sort of big venues are supporting this, and it'd be good if you know, committee members could be invited to those, and I'm sure the attendance from committee members would be good.
Can I suggest then, because people are talking, there's quite a few people saying that that we try to get an events programme together whereby we do some visits, or when there are events that we try and get there. There is always a lot for us to do, and we're invited to all sorts of things. Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, I think if we can just get email invitations, and if we're available, we can, you know, diarise it and come along. We don't all have to come en masse, but the more that go, you know, as you said, Henry, it's really those events that you went to. I went to the year before, and they were fantastic and really opened my eyes to what goes on in the city. And I think it'd be really beneficial for all committee members, if they could, to go along to some of these great events, and school opening, school refurbishment projects, whatever it might be. It'd be great to go in and see firsthand, if it's not too inconvenient for the venues, of course.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, okay. So we are asked to note. So, sorry, are there any more questions or comments? Okay, so we are asked to note this. The update report. This will go to full council, so it will come to us in July, and we will obviously have our usual round of speakers. So that's where it's coming next. So if we move on to agenda item number 11, which... Sorry, agenda item number 10, which is about 2 Ofsted registered post-16 supported accommodation properties that we... are looking to buy. So I'll hand over to Heather Stowey to give us the background on that. Thanks.
That's okay. So yes, we're looking to award to 2 Ofsted registered properties to deliver 16 plus medium and high support accommodation, which particularly is addressing a quite urgent sufficiency gap that we're seeing following a loss of provision at the foyer and St George's. We are having to use more ESAs, that's externally supported accommodation, which is at a higher cost and a more kind of mixed standard of provision. It isn't all poor provision, I just want to reassure you. And we are doing quite a lot of quality assurance work, but we think that we can guarantee a much better standard of provision this way. So 1625 has found 2 properties, an assessment centre and a medium to high support property, and we're proposing a block contract at a cost of 4,235,132, which represents quite a significant saving compared with the cost that we would see if we were to commission those through ESA provision. That's it.
Okay, Councillor Varney first, but indicate to me if you wish to ask.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. Just there was, I think, a question in public forum about the potential of voids and then whether or not we'd achieve the saving that we're hoping to achieve. What's your feeling on that?
So we do a lot of work to avoid voids and to make sure that we can fill provision, particularly if we're commissioning a block contract. And we've also done a lot of work on the kind of needs to make sure that we're not commissioning more than we think we require. So I think we're pretty confident that we could fill these and therefore kind of mitigate that risk. And we have various panels processes to make sure that we're filling the voids as they arise, if and when they do. We also will also review it kind of as we go through the contract to see if we need to look again at that.
And basically, in terms of the number of spaces that these two new properties will offer, we still have a bigger number of people who are out of area who will probably be eligible candidates for these properties, if possible.
We still think we'll need to use ESAs even with this as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mack?
Yeah, both Public Forum and Councillor Varney kind of stole my questions, so we're all focused on the same thing, but I might just dive a little bit deeper of was there sensitivity testing about, so I know it was looking for 90% or 95% occupancy, but was there sensitivity, you know, if it dropped to 80% occupancy, is it still good value for money? Yeah, did we track that?
Yeah, so we think when compared with ESA provision, we can still show we can break even at 73% occupancy when compared with ESA.
Okay, any questions or comments? Yep, Katja.
I mean, I do hope we don't have too many empty spaces, but quite frankly, I'd prefer us to have a few empty spaces than to be overfull and not have space for someone. I think that's really important. Thank you. That's just a comment.
I mean, and also it's about us. We've already got a very close relationship with independent people, 16 to 85. They're very localised. I'm sure numerous people, you know, they've been around for a long time, and for them to be the provider, it's got to be better than going out onto what is either a framework or a market or something like that. So there will be quite a lot of close work with the community and with the ward councillors as this progresses. But it is, as it said in the paper, it is staffed 24/7, and it will be wake and night shifts for those young people. So are there any more comments or questions? Yeah.
Do we have a sufficiency of workers for the children's homes? Because there does seem to be a problem with recruitment in children's homes. Or maybe I'm misreading that.
I mean, I don't know what the situation is for independent people. So they will be the employer because... do you know if they've got the staff?
An issue.
Yeah, so they think they have. I mean, they absolutely face recruitment challenges, the same as anyone else, but they're assured that they can staff this provision.
I suppose the only point I was going to make about children's homes as well as this provision is that I can assure you that the care plan always drives the commissioning, you know, rather than the budget. I mean, we do always have a sort of healthy conversation about, you know, which comes first, the care plan or the financial expediency. It is always the care plan that comes first, particularly, and we've been, you know, most conscious of that in children's homes, wanting to, you know, make sure we place the right children for their sake in the children's homes in the right order, with the right level of needs. So I just wanted to sort of reassure you on that.
Any other further comments or questions from committee? Okay, so this is a key decision, so we are going to need to vote on this. So I've got the pieces of the statements that I need to read out officially. So is there somebody that can second this? Councillor Varney, thank you. Okay, so as a committee, we are asked to, 1, approve the proposals to commission 2 properties as Ofsted registered 16 plus supported accommodation, delivering both assessment and longer term medium to high support placements. Number 2, we have been asked to authorise the Executive Director of Children in consultation with the Chair of the CYP Committee to procure and award the supported accommodation contract in line with the procurement routes and maximum budget outlined in the report. And number 3, authorise the Executive Director of Education to invoke any subsequent extensions or variations specifically defined in the contract being awarded up to the maximum budget outlined in the report. So can I ask for a show of hands, please, for all those that are voting in favour of that? That's unanimous. Thank you. So that takes us on to item number 11, which is the school readiness report. So if you remember, this was on our when we met and were doing some forward planning around areas that we were interested in bringing to this committee. School readiness was one of those areas. So I will hand over to Claire to introduce the paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I also have Dawn Butler here, who's our Service Manager for Early Years, to answer any questions, should there be any. So this is going to provide an overview for you for early years to reception transition, the support available to children and families, some of the key challenges that we face and the actions that we're taking to improve outcomes. So school readiness is a critical foundation for children's future learning, well-being and life chances. But being ready for school is not just about academic ability. It includes communication and language development, personal, social and emotional development, physical development, independence and self-regulation. And we know that children who start school ready to learn are significantly more likely to achieve positive outcomes later. It's also worth noting that school readiness isn't just about children being ready for school, but the schools and settings being ready for them. So in Bristol, many children make a strong start, but outcomes are often uneven and there are significant variations across the city. And this is particularly true for children who might be classed as disadvantaged and living in poverty. Children with SEND, those eligible for free school meals and some global majority groups are less likely to reach a good level of development. Speech and language delays also continue to be a key concern. Transition from earlier settings into reception is generally well supported, but practice is not yet consistently strong across all providers and schools. So there is a wide range of support in place across the system. So for children and families, we have children's centres and family hubs that offer early help and parenting support, health visiting and early identification of need, also speech and language interventions and targeted support for families identified as vulnerable. Then moving into settings in schools, there's some early years advisory support and training and development for practitioners. There's also transition guidance and shared practice between nurseries and schools. We're developing our system-wide work, so stronger partnership working between education, health and social care, and a real focus on that early identification and intervention. So despite some of these strengths, there are still some clear challenges. So there are some gaps that persist, so the inequality of outcomes. Speech, language and communication needs, we're seeing increasing levels of this need on entry to reception. And in terms of parental and carer confidence and engagement, some families are needing more support to help prepare their children for school. Again, back to consistency of transition, there is some quality in that varies across the system. And we also need to acknowledge that there are some workforce pressures in the early year sector. So in terms of our proposed actions, the report sets out a number of key actions, but the driver is our Best Start in Life plan, which was published at the end of March. And so just to cover off some of those key ambitions within the plan. So it's around strengthening the early identification and intervention. So that's earlier support for speech, language and communication and a better use of data to identify needs earlier. Improve consistency of transition, so clear expectations and guidance for settings and schools and sharing the effective practice across the system. Supporting parents and carers, so expanding some evidence-based parenting programmes and improving communication about what school readiness means, because it means different things to different groups. And again, back to that point at the beginning about schools being ready for children as well as children being ready for school. Real focus on particular groups, so targeted support to close the gap for children classed as disadvantaged and those with SEND, and then developing the workforce through training and support and continuing to strengthen recruitment and retention. So what we want to see from the plan is more children starting reception ready to learn, and that will come from parents, carers and schools, narrower gaps between those different groups of children and improve speech, language and communication outcomes in particular. We want greater confidence among parents and carers for their children starting school and a more consistent, high-quality transition experience across Bristol. So in summary, school readiness is a key priority for improving those long-term outcomes. And as I said, while there is strong practice in parts of the system, it's about building that consistency for all our children across the city. Proposed actions focus on early intervention, partnership working and reduced inequalities, but this is a real shared responsibility across services, settings, schools and families, and requires that coordinated whole system approach that the Best Start in Life plan will bring. So happy to finish there, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, committee members, any questions, comments on this paper that was specifically requested? Councillor Freeman.
Yeah, just wondering when you said about there's variation, there's not consistency across the service, which, you know, doesn't surprise me in any way. I wondered whether the increase in trusts and schools joining Academy Trust, whether that's helping, not helping, like how does that come into this?
I think in some cases where there is an agreed transition approach, that can bring real strength to those schools as part of that community. I think the challenges are where parents have choice of schools with some organisations, local authority, maintained schools. There is just that variety. And so it really is about sharing that good practice cross-organisation so that we can utilise the benefits of some of that strong practice and that consistency. And in other trusts, they may not have an agreed transition approach either. So again, developing that along with them.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, yeah, it feels like quite a thorough report, and it's really good that you know, the parents, carers who shared their views with the forum, that they were able to get quite a large percentage of people from seldom heard groups. Yeah, I think it is quite shocking, sort of some of the statistics in terms of time lost to toilet training, and you know, 24% of children in the region not toilet trained by the time they get to school. I guess my questions are, I mean, it's a good summary of like the risks and the opportunities, the challenges, the opportunities. What's kind of like the next steps, if you were to say like these are the next 3 steps we're going to be doing to tackle this? You know, maybe that's already underway. I guess the next steps is the bit that I find harder to pick out of the report.
Yeah, so some of that will come through the implementation planning of the Best Start in Life. So the overall strategic plan was published in March, and we're working on those 5 ambitions, developing those delivery plans. So lots of that will come through what we've talked about in terms of next steps. But it is definitely about connecting our services to support parents and carers. And as I said earlier, sharing that good practice. We've got a developing piece of work, which is wider transition. So into reception transition forms part of that. Is also work around year 6 to year 7 transition, which is another big piece. So very much working towards those principles of effective transition at every stage, and where we can look to support everybody with improving that.
Lovely. I wonder whether we would, maybe in about a year or so, whether we could have an update on how it's been going, if we could add that to our to-do list.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, I think that just to make a comment on the you know, Vic was talking earlier on about the sort of work of clusters of schools working in localities in terms of early inclusion. Obviously, some of the bits of work around social care, sort of really early help, is about locality work around inclusion, early help. This is also looking at the sort of school readiness, very young children. So our work on prevention, which we will bring as well. I mean, I'm not saying we should do it separately. We could do it separately, we could do it together. Will be about how do we join up better across multi-agencies in localities around children, particularly around schools, which is part of the sort of the conversation around what the SEND reforms have been driving, I think particularly. So yes, we can bring an update, but I think what we're trying to do is bring the strands, the social care, SEND, and also the sort of early help, early years and early help strand together in a single model.
Councillor Mack.
Yeah, I imagine these are the this is a sort of comment that has been said regularly in this committee, so apologies that I'm not here, but normally here. You know, there's links here to deprivation and you know, the strong link to readiness and those growing up in areas of deprivation, and then you're looking at that on the impact of teachers' time in terms of supporting those children who are coming in, not at the level of readiness, and it just makes me say that. I think like taking that step back of, well, really the problem here is the pressure that is on low-income households, low-income families and parents in terms of having the time and having the ability to get everyone ready for school. And I know that's almost like the bigger prevention thing of, really this data is just another thing that shows us the problem here is the inequity, the wealth inequity still in our city, and we need to carry on addressing that. That's not really a very helpful comment, but just something that every time we look at data like this that just shows how many impacts it has, how much impact it has then on our education and our schooling system.
Councillor Hernton.
Bringing on what Heather Max said is the thing that I always keep going on about the salaries we pay the people that we support. So very many of those people that are on low deprivation, they will be TAs or care workers or something like that. So it is really, really important when we commission work and things that we pay people properly, because these are the results of bad pay.
Councillor Collar.
I'm really sorry, it's numbers. So on page 111, or page 2, the school readiness survey of over 1,000 primary school staff and 1,000 parents of reception children, and it found that 85% of 1,132 respondents. Are we talking about 1,132 respondents that were teachers, and do we have a clear idea of exactly how many surveys were returned in terms of over 1,000, and whether or not there's a comparison between the schools and the parents and what their respondents were? Because the answers seem to be aimed at what I would expect from primary school and not necessarily from parents.
So I don't have the detail, but the link in the report is the full survey, so it might be that I just need to go in there and look at that detail for you.
No, that'd be cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, so we are asked as a committee to note this report. This is information for us, and we've also minuted that we'll get an update maybe in a year's time on this, by which time the national target will be in place. Yes, I'm getting nods. Yeah, okay. By which time the national target from the DFE will be in place. So we'll have a sort of we'll have a good something to measure it against. Okay, thank you. So moving on to agenda item number 12, which is the financial provisional outturn, which is basically the whole of last year's budget. So it's 25-26, the 25-26 budget. So I'm sure Strategy and Resources have had this budget, but this is our bit. So it's over to Hannah to give us the introduction for this.
Yeah, so this covers, as you say, a report that went to the whole Strategy and Resources Committee, and this is the children's section of it. And it looks at the difference between where we were in period 10 and period 12. So it looks at the difference between February and the end of March, end of January, end of March. I mean, where we ended up, as you can see, is we did end up with an overspend position in terms of 14.5 million overspend, which is 10% of our total budget. Of that, 9 million was in the placements budget, and which is 12% of the placements budget, and 4.8 million was in children's social care, particularly staffing and specialist services. So just to break down the 9 million, which looked approximately just over 5 million of that was additional children coming into children's social care, specialist sort of out-of-county placements, and the remainder was the cost of housing as we talked a bit about this during the year, you ask unaccompanied asylum seeker children care leavers. So we get a Home Office grant for the cost of housing care leavers, unaccompanied asylum seeker care leavers. Pre-18, it more or less nets off. It meets their cost. Post-18, it doesn't. So there's a pressure. There was about a 2.8 million pressure in year there. And there was also a pressure on families with no recourse to public funds as well. And we're working on both of those, particularly around commissioning of housing. The Stable Homes programme that we talked to last time speaks to the pressure on placements. And I understand that, you know, there's an overspend, it's over our budget. That's, you know, that is a problem for sure. If I say that what we saw was a reduced inflation rate in terms of costs are lower, they were going up much less than they were in the previous 3 years, and we can show the inflation increase starting to taper off, partly as a result of all the sort of the commissioning provision work that we've been doing, prevention work that we've been doing. So we are hopeful of being able to control that better this year, but it's, as you've said, in every council in this country, there's a significant pressure in terms of children's placements from an out-of-county children's homes market. And then we did deliver £13 million worth of savings in year. Most of that was in our Families First programme as well. And we ended the year, as we've talked about already, with a DSG deficit position of 44 million, cumulatively 88, which we talked to this earlier on, the plan that we're submitting against the SEND reforms plan. We are hopeful and we're fairly positive that we'll be able to meet the test there and therefore receive up to 100 million of DSG deficit funding, which will deal with the majority of that deficit there. So we've got work to do, particularly in terms of children's social care placements. We're aware of that. Part of that, as we know, starts back to the conversation we just had with prevention in the early years, but the work of the education system, the work of family hubs, and then all the way into edge of care services and through into social care services, the work of our own children's homes, and the commissioning of out-of-county placements. So it's an end-to-end programme transformation which Heather presented last time. Looking into this year, as I say, we're looking at about, we on the budget book, there's £16 million worth of saving against children's and education services. Sorry, I need to speak forward. Which again, we've got plans to meet, but we have started the year with pressures, as you can hear, placements, and we'll bring a further report to that once we've talked to Strategy and Resources Committee in the right order. So happy to take any questions.
Okay, has anyone got any questions or comments about the last financial turnout for 25-26? Katja.
I just saw, I do appreciate why we're overspending on the revenue budget, but I did see on the capital spend, I might have it wrong, that we're underspending on the capital spend. Is that correct?
So,
I'm trying to find it where it is.
Sorry. Well, we have seen slight underspends on both children's homes and the education programme, and part of that is about, well, we've talked a lot about the children's homes underspend, and we know the causes of that. We have rebased both programmes, and we are now hopeful of being able to deliver to our budget in year. We've got a really significant education capital programme, which we've talked about here before, which is on track. And our children's homes programme is currently, following the rebasing, on track. Things that are going to set it off, one is Ofsted registration, the other one is registered managers recruitment, as you know, and then the third is planning. So we've got to get over those hurdles in order to open the programmes. So yes, you did see there was some minor underspend in year. We've reset that at the start of this year, and we'll bring up reports as needed.
Because underspending capital spending means certain things haven't got done that were predicted to get done. That's the way I see underspending capital.
Yes, I think also, just to add, there were two schemes in the Education Capital Programme which will have had provision. So the Trim Valley Free School, which was announced after the end of the financial year, and will now move into mobilisation, but that we did hold funding for last year in case it did get approved to proceed. And also what was called the free post-16 free school, which was a collaborative bid with Cabot Learning Federation, which again has since been ceased, so will not go ahead, but we did make provisions of about £4 million for that programme as well from this grant.
Any other, Shona?
Yeah, just one clarification. On page 136 of the overall pack, so it's got a breakdown of the different parts of our budget, and just near the top, line 18, strategic improvement and collaboration. I just wondered if you could clarify a bit more about what that means in layman's terms.
That's my directorate. So it consists of commissioning, transformation, quality assurance and safeguarding, including the partnership boards and all of our family hubs and early help services.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, in that case then, so as the committee we are asked to note this report. Okay, and that moves us on to agenda item 13, before which there will be public forum. I'm thinking, do people want, you want 5 minutes? Okay, so 6:45 then, and can we all be back for 6:45? Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 13, the Independent Social Media Investigation Outcome Report. So there is public forum before this item. So there seems to be 2 people that are able, and in public forum. So questions, as I said earlier on, have been published on the website. The answers have been provided. So Jen, you've got 2 additional questions.
Who's sending the death rays?
Do you want to stand here?
Oh, I don't know who stands. Not all work capability assessment.
I think so.
Hello. I'm going to be laughing at the next person.
The 2 at the front, apparently, if you stand between, yeah. Or near either one or other of them.
Here, this here.
Yeah, that's it.
Should I turn the fan off?
Yes.
This wasn't like a dignified start. Hello.
Yeah, can you stand a bit, if you stand a bit closer.
Hello.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Right, right, okay, yeah, I did have supplementary questions, just I wasn't convinced that the public forum had been answered, really. A lot of the questions didn't really seem very answered, but going with the question 2. So I've since seen a copy of the report with my name unredacted, so this paragraph is about me. I didn't do any of what you might call campaigning until years after this. I didn't even join Bristol Parent Carers until September 2018. The filming was public meetings, as was the meeting papers. The whole paragraph is a lie. The investigator did not even investigate this. So this lie impacts the veracity of the entire report and the competence of the investigator, does it not? Really?
Jen, I can't comment on the investigation because I had nothing to do with it.
But the fact is that this paragraph has been published against me and it's entirely libelous because it's just...
It hasn't been published against you, it's been redacted.
No, I know, but even... The fact is, it's just a lie though, isn't it? Okay, right, I've changed my question. I'll go with one that might be easier then. So, do you not think, in light of the fact that this report is a complete shambolic mess, that you ought to resign as chair of this committee?
No, I won't be resigning. I've just been reappointed by full council, and then that's been pushed through this committee, so I won't be doing that.
That's marvellous, thank you.
Have you got a second question?
I do have a second question. Okay, so this was to do with the test of bias. So Bristol City Council directly provided the investigator with witnesses. So that's bias immediately, isn't it? So the council has told the investigator who to talk to, because the investigator told me that herself. So the investigator clearly chose not to ask for evidence, paragraph 39 on page 36. So you're saying a fair-minded and informed observer would not conclude bias with this report because the public forum says otherwise. Public forum can see the bias quite clearly in this report. So how can you not see it?
I will be making a comment about the content, some of the content of what's in the report. The report is independent, Jen, and it was... Hannah Woodhouse is going to speak to the process and speak to how it was that this council came to do this particular investigation and the safeguards that were put in place. What I can't do is comment on what was put in there or what wasn't put in there. It was because it was the investigator's report.
And I mean, I will speak to the process that was followed in terms of requesting witnesses to come forward to speak to the investigator, and then the investigator then followed that up with members of staff that she wished to speak to. So I go through that process, but there was a sort of open request for all evidence to come forward, which is where the original witnesses came from.
I didn't. She contacted me directly and said the council had told her to speak to me. So I just thought I'd just put that out there, because that doesn't... I think that does suggest bias, especially if they're fishing around for like particular witnesses. But there we go. That's my 2 questions. So thank you.
Thank you. And second person in the public gallery, Dan Ackroyd, do you wish to take your 2 questions?
Actually,
okay.
It's a question regarding the low quality of the accessibility problems in the report. Obviously, the council doesn't deal with redacted documents that often. I know it's not going to be the same committee, but my understanding is the Barton House review is coming back soon. So can the Democratic Services or whoever's handling that report make sure that that report is accessible? I know it's not this committee, but
we can make a request and make sure that the housing, whoever does Ashley's job on housing, is aware. But what we can't do is, that's how the report came in. That was the investigator's report.
Yeah. It's just more important to fix it for the next report. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. You don't have a second? No. Okay. So in that case, we move on to Hannah Woodhouse, who's going to introduce the report. Oh, beg your pardon, Jen. Do you want to speak to your statement? Beg your pardon.
I would if that's all right, actually. Kind of changed a lot over the course of the day. Is the mic on? Yeah. Okay, so I actually had a completely dignified statement I was going to read out tonight, and that was until I saw your answers to questions in public forum. And it's a real shame, actually, because I can see that the council is working with Bristol parent carers to improve things, like even acknowledging the emotionally based school avoidance term, like being offensive these days, and moving to a different one, which I believe was probably co-produced with the forum. So it's such a shame. It's such a shame that this report is £100,000 worth of spies and lies that deliberately finds in the council's favour. It's £100,000 of fantasy fiction. Officers have blatantly lied about me again, and they didn't even do it very well because I proved the lies in about 2 minutes. Firstly, I find it utterly disgusting that people in positions of power at Bristol City Council tell lies of such magnitude. It's a risk to every person in Bristol, and you've shown SEND families that you are not to be trusted, not a single one of you. Secondly, I find it baffling that presumably highly qualified people have lied, and that's the best lie they can come up with. With that level of incompetence, no wonder there are currently families waiting over 70 weeks for an EHCP. Thirdly, how did this independent investigator not at least look for verifiable evidence? She didn't. She took the words of liars over what could be proven facts. There has been no misrepresentation of Bristol City Council. You are that bad. The independent investigation found my Twitter feed was monitored, that without my knowledge, evidence gathering took place and surveillance actually happened. So Bristol City Council did spy and they lied. And they continue to lie, and I rather suspect they are continuing to spy. You painted me out as someone who suddenly woke up one day and decided to target the education department. I had years of my children experiencing SEND incompetence and barriers to education, as some of you in this room very well know, and I wanted to find out why. My statement this evening has even been redacted, and this is because they don't want you to hear that SEND children and young people in Bristol experienced and continue to experience things such as unlawful exclusion, off-rolling, self-harm and attempts to take their life because Bristol SEND was and is that bad. Bristol SEND treated children so badly that they wanted to die. Make no mistake, it happened, and to redact all that is disgraceful. Every time I watch this meeting, in person or remotely, it looks like some Eden and Blighton jolly picnic in the countryside. It's not on. Not when I'm still about to go to the LGO, yet again about SEND provision at the council. Bristol is a city that spies on its residents, it carries out surveillance on them, and it gathers evidence. There is nothing to stop this happening to anyone. This was a chance for the city to apologise, be honest and be courageous, and you just didn't.
Thank you. And Dan Ackroyd, do you wish to speak to yours?
I'd like to thank the Executive Director and Chair. It's nice to see reasonably competent people who care enough to try to do their roles well. However, that is not enough. To work effectively, you need competent organisations behind you. I have doubts about both the council and the political parties in this city. I find the report's consideration of the RIPA question is inadequate. The key question is whether the activity amounts to directed surveillance under RIPA. From the report, section 118. We are going to need to start to collate hard evidence. I am not on Twitter, so can only ever see a few tweets at a time. I have saved several others over the past months, but we need it all. Is that something you can ask one of your colleagues in comms to do for us, please? Section 120. If this is needed as evidence for the BPCF funding issue, wouldn't it be acceptable to simply share their accounts as evidence? Council staff were repeatedly reviewing at least one person's Twitter account, newsletter pages, downloading information, storing it, cross-checking with other data sources and sharing it. Bristol City Council spied on people who were causing a political cost for the administration. This council needs a plan of how to engage with campaigners. The council mostly relies on politicians to engage with campaigners, but it seems that there's almost no way of doing that without it being traumatic for everyone involved. Chair, I am surprised that you redacted the words from my statement, these words. To make it worse, apparently eczema in children of some ethnic groups can be mistaken for signs of deliberate harm, and the appropriate authorities are involved, which somehow still ends up the family still living in the same mouldy home. You blocked those for not being in the remit of the Children and Young People Policy Committee. I don't think they're getting enough attention at the Housing Committee. They should have been allowed here. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to comment on that, Dan.
Okay.
I have spent nearly 2 years trying to get every other policy chair and policy committee to understand that children are residents too, and that when something is about a child, you can't just look at children's services or education to sort it out. It's quite deliberate that I'm saying you need to go to housing. I want housing to take on more responsibility and think about children more, so that the issues that you're raising can be tackled and there can be a plan. But we're talking about culture, we're talking about attitude, not just of elected members and officers, but of society. Because society, today and yesterday, when we have schools closing, everybody looks at teachers. It's the teacher's fault. And it isn't. Teachers have children too, and teachers have to, they're actually working inside those buildings. It is everybody, in the same way that it's everybody, it's corporate responsibility, everybody's responsible for children. Children are our residents. And it's something that was lacking in May 24, because all eyes looked at children or education to sort something out, and that is something I'm pushing away from. Thank you. I'm going to invite Hannah Woodhouse now to outline the process and the mechanics of it.
Thank you. So I just was going to introduce this item and the covering report that covers it. Before I do so, I do want to say, and I will say it again at the end, that clearly the period referred to was obviously a really difficult time for everyone. And in 2026, I hope, as you've already heard in the committee, that we're not there yet, but we are making some progress. And there are tangible signs of progress, particularly in terms of numbers of young people waiting for assessment. It's not good enough yet. We need to be better. We know that. And so we bring that data to the Children's Young People's Committee every month in order to share the data and the progress, in order to be transparent and to welcome the scrutiny and challenge that brings. And Vic's talked about the plan that we've submitted in response to the SEND reforms, which has been developed very much in partnership with the Parent Carer Forum. And so in 2026, looking forward, none of this would have been possible without the careful guidance and leadership of the Parent Carer Forum. And we look forward to continuing our work together to deliver those reforms. So just going back to 2022, just to remind everyone in terms of the background to this investigation, in July 2022, concerns were raised about the use of social media by council staff, and the council's legal team were asked to carry out an investigation by the then Chief Executive. A report on the findings was brought to the Audit Committee and then to People's Scrutiny on the 26th of September 2022. Subsequently, members voted in a golden motion to the full council, to request that the then Mayor commission an independent investigation. This was not taken forward. Bristol has since moved to a committee model and no longer has a mayor or cabinet. But since then, ongoing concerns continue to be raised. The matter wasn't addressed. And there was a constant request for an independent investigation, leaving some uncertainty about the extent of social media use by staff. And there were continuing requests for an external investigation when I started in post. And in July 2025, this committee made a request to me to consider an independent investigation. So in August 2025, you voted to undertake that investigation and to ask me to develop a terms of reference and nominate an investigator. So the investigation did focus on the period September 21 through to August 22, but the terms of reference are clear that it should also take into account any other evidence of social media misuse at any time by the council staff that a contributor feels provides context and the investigator regards as relevant. The scope of the investigation, you can read for yourself in the terms of reference, was to provide an external and independent assessment of the accessing or reviewing of online content by or on behalf of Bristol City Council SEND and Disabled Children's Services staff during the period 21 to 22, or, as I've said, thereafter. It was included, but not limited to, social media accounts, professional pages, online platforms, etc. The investigation was asked to take into account requirements under UK GDPR, data protection, Human Rights Act 1998. It should examine evidence of what activity took place, whether such activity was appropriate use of council time, whether it was authorised through the proper channels, whether it was consistent with policy law, and the impact such activity had on the parent-carer forum, parents or families, including whether SEND support or provision was altered, withdrawn or influenced. The report of the investigation set out findings and recommendations, was asked to set out findings and recommendations on which senior leadership would take further action. It took 7 months in total for this investigation to take place. There was an ask, as I've said, for witnesses, and the investigator worked with me to identify members of staff who were here at the time or who have since left, who were invited to contribute to the investigation as well. It drew on evidence shared in confidence by a range of contributors. It sought to it did seek to make every available piece of evidence, make sure every available piece of evidence was considered, and it offered many opportunities for witnesses to meet with the investigator in a neutral venue, hear evidence online or received anonymously. So just to speak to the sort of point about independence, when investigations are requested, a senior official has to commission them. So that was my job. It may have been helpful that obviously I wasn't in post at the time, talked about, neither was the Chief Exec or the Director of Education and Skills. And so my office were the only people who were involved in supporting the investigator. There was no engagement from comms or the service or from the legal team or from councillors. And my role was to pass information from the subject access requests in the council to the investigator when she asked for them, as was set out in the terms of reference. So it did take a bit longer than expected. I think we originally said it would come in the spring. The initial evidence gathering phase was extended to support as many as possible to come forward. We worked with the Parent Carer Forum on publicising that. The investigator requested that all unredacted versions of subject access requests which were relevant, and that took some time to piece together. She talks a bit to that in the investigation, which speaks to the point about deletion of emails. It was difficult to put together the SARS in unredacted form, and it did take quite a long time. Hence the recommendation around considering the deletion of emails. She did, however, she says in the report that she was satisfied that she had received sufficient relevant information to reach a decision. There were a number of difficulties of investigating an issue which was in the past. One of the points that she makes is that there was an issue in the way many of the SARs had been redacted very heavily over what were big signature blocks, which meant that those who'd requested the SARs may have, in her words, they did not bear the weight imposed upon them by those who've raised concern about surveillance, i.e. they may have appeared to have contained more than they did. which led to some of the questions and the concerns. So the findings, as we've heard, the investigation found that there was information about 2 members of the Bristol Parent Carer Forum was gathered from publicly available sources during 2 short time periods in autumn 2021 and in the spring of 2022, but her legal opinion was that it did not amount to surveillance and it did not breach privacy rights. So the investigator concluded that she did not receive evidence of any widespread, routine or systematic monitoring of individual social media accounts by council staff as defined by the Regulation of Investigatory Powers or REPA, nor did she find any evidence of political direction or involvement in the evidence gathering that took place. The report does make a small number of recommendations to improve how the council applies surveillance legislation, as we've heard, manages records and supports staff, helping to strengthen our practice going forward. And we will consider, as officers will consider those recommendations, decisions required will be referred to the relevant committee. So the last point, just some last points. The investigation was funded from the SEND budget, and that's because it is the only budget that we have to be able to pay for an investigation of this type. The final report is redacted to recognise and protect those contributing evidence to the investigation. And once again, neither I nor anyone in the council had any hand in the drafting or production of this document, and it is shared in the form that it was received. And we do recognise that it is a long and technical document, which is why the investigator was asked to produce an accessible evidence summary, and it's helpful to take the suggestion of further investigations in that spirit. The process of sharing evidence, making sure everything was heard, has been a difficult process and really sensitive for those involved, everyone involved at the time. We recognise that publication of this final report has been difficult. We are grateful to all of those who came forward in the spirit of wanting to understand and learn from the events of that period. So the report is brought to the committee purely for noting. There is no decision to be taken. It is worth saying that after today, we would very much like to consider this matter closed. Just to conclude, it remains the priority of Bristol City Council to deliver for vulnerable children and young people, including for those with special educational needs and disabilities, working together with our partners in the Parent Carer Forum, the NHS and the education system. And in 2026, we have much to do, but we are in a positive place, seeing progress in more timely assessments, designing together an ambitious SEND reform plan to deliver for children and families. We're grateful to the partnership leadership and contribution of all our partners working with parents and our staff in this important work. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm also going to read out a comment in relation to this report. Firstly, I want to recognise that there are 2 parents within this report that clearly the practice was unacceptable. What happened to those 2 parents was not an acceptable form of practice. It is a snapshot and it is an expose of what had been evident for years to those of us that had lived experience, be that personal, professional, or in some cases both, of not only the SEND system but the wider education system at that time. It describes what can happen when there is a lack of corporate interest, vision or oversight for of areas for which it holds elected responsibility on a statutory basis. The culture of an institution and its culture that has created this situation is set by those at the top. Those who work within that institution will be guided by that is valued, equally by that which is passed over. This report demonstrates that what was valued is what got in the media, not how well the services were serving children and families in relation to the 2 parents that are particularly highlighted. Part of that was identified very well with Parent B when they spoke about different senior leaders had gone and they didn't really understand it. New people would come and they didn't really have the time to figure it out. The churn of senior leaders and political leads at that time and leading up to it was really very high. I recognise that the report author did not have the knowledge and context of that time period and what led up to it. But some of us do, and some of us still have that sort of context. We're in a better place now. We're really beginning to see that come through. However, any damage that was done at that time. I can't influence where the investigation went. The point of it was that it was external and that it was independent. The only difference between what's been published and what I've seen is that I've seen the unredacted version because that was in the terms of reference. Other than that, I have had no other communication or contact with the writing of the report. And so, over to committee members for comments and questions. And Councillor Bales, welcome to the committee. Nice to hear your voice for the first time. Go ahead.
Firstly, a comment. SEND services currently are worse than I've ever been, and I've got lived experience of that. And now I'll read out some questions I'd like answered today, if possible. Will the Council now stop deleting or change its redemption policy in work emails and other records when senior officers leave, especially when complaints, SARS, FOIs or investigations are still live? Question 2. Under the new committee system, who is responsible for making sure this never happens again? Question 3. Are councillors leading the response to this report, or are officers still steering what members are allowed to question? Question 4. The committee report says this cost around £90,000 and the contract register estimated £100,000. What is the full cost once officer time, legal work, redaction and publication are included? Will the Council publish the written costing and comparison used to reject my terms of reference and explain whether the investigation was better value or just narrower? Question 6. Why was the scope so narrow when parent carers had already said the issue was wider than social media screenshots? Question 7. What evidence was ruled out as out of scope? And if my terms of reference had been used, would more of the complaints have been upheld? Question 8. If new evidence comes forward, will the committee commission a wider investigation based on my terms of reference, which were approved by affected parent carers? Question 9. Were any council policies changed, updated, renewed, dropped or used to justify monitoring parent carers? Question 10. Were any parent carers treated as if they had broken the law, reported to the police or discussed with the police in a way to justify monitoring them online or in person? Question 11. Were any parent carers, children, wider family members, friends or associates monitored because of their link to the affected parent carers? Question 12. Does the committee accept that something can fall below the REPA threshold but still be wrong, harmful or inappropriate? Question 13. What will the council now do to look at the impact on the children, not just the adults? When did the council realise that parent carers accused of being Bristol citizen were not Bristol citizen, and why has the council not clearly apologised for the harm caused? Question 15. Was there a jigsaw identification check before publication? Meaning, did anyone check whether people could still work out who anonymous parent carers were from the details left in the report? Question 16. Was an equality impact accessibility check done before the report was published, given that some people cannot use screen readers or auto readers on it? Question 17. Why are parent carers talking about trauma and poor treatment by SEND services described as vitriolic when a councillor saying they would rather slit their own throat during a full council speech was not treated as a conduct concern? 18. How has the council taken account of the power imbalance between SEND families and the officers who control records, decisions and support? Question 19. Has the council checked whether officers involved in this matter had previous complaints about how they treated parent carers or children? Question 20. Have any officers left, changed role, been disciplined or received settlements because of this investigation? Question 21. Why does the report recommend protecting staff from criticism, but not protecting parent carers and children from poor practice. Question 22. Why does the report not recommend a public action plan with deadlines, named owners and progress reports? Question 23. The SEND relationship with parent carers was already broken after the last Ofsted inspection with a written statement of action. Given another inspection is coming, what will the council do now to repair that relationship? Question 24. Does the committee accept that many parent carers feel SEND services are now worse, not better? 25. If the council is not ready to apologise to affected families, what exactly would need to happen before it will? Question 26, and my final question. What will actually change after this report, apart from officers saying lessons will be learned?
Thank you. I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer all of your 26 questions, and some of them are not yet at a point where the answer is available. The recommendations will be taken to Strategy and Resources because that's the area that oversees staff policy, IT retention. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Mack? So it will go from here, the 3 recommendations will go into that committee, and it will be for that committee to follow the implementation of those things. I agree with you, saying something doesn't meet a threshold is not the same as saying the practice and the culture that created that practice in the first place and the focus that enabled and indicated to some staff that was what they wanted, that was what the administration wanted, doesn't always reach legal thresholds. That's about practice and culture, and as I said in the opening statement, that's about leadership and focus. Anybody else? Oh, okay. Hannah thinks she's got some more responses for your questions.
I mean, I was just going to say, if you can give me the, obviously that was a lot of questions in order to write down really quickly. We can reply in writing. If you can give me the questions, we're happy to do that. I think I've talked a little bit to the process of particularly the scope and the evidence base that was considered. That there was, definitely the remit of the investigation was to consider everything that was given, and it was extended on at least one occasion to be able to welcome as much evidence as possible. I think it's worth saying, just on the sort of full cost point, the investigator did all of the redactions, so there have been no staff costs in terms of the redaction process at all, and or the development of the report in itself. We've just kept the whole production of this report completely separate from the organisation in itself. That in itself may have brought its challenges in terms of accessibility, just as we've pointed to. And it's worth saying, just to your point about inspection, certainly it was a theme, as you said, in the 2023 SEND inspection, the relationships with parent-care reform, and it spoke to this time. We are, as I've said before, I think we are hopeful that we are in a different place now, largely as a result of some very difficult leadership, which has been led both by partners around the table, and we continue to work really hard on that. But yeah, really happy to provide answers in writing, Councillor Bales, if it's helpful. Thank you.
I didn't have my microphone. Can we have those answers at committee, not just in writing to me? Because I asked them here in a public place. Can we have the answers publicly?
Those that can be brought to public will be brought to public, yes. Councillor Mack.
Yeah, I'd just comment as I sit on strategy and resources, so I'm going to speak on behalf of my role on strategy and resources, so obviously the recommendations here come in strategy and resources, and I'll definitely endorse taking those recommendations forwards, especially the email deletion one is something that quite a few in, cross-party, inside the council, outside the council, have had quite a few frustrations with, because it's a problem when we can't look into the background of certain things that happened in the last administration. So yes, very happy to follow that one up.
Councillor Varney and then Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, just on the point of retaining data, In the business world, I believe records and documents are kept for 6 years traditionally. I'm not sure if we have to go for 6 years. Maybe it could be a term of office perhaps, but I think we do need to considerably lengthen the amount of time to retain documentation so we can't have this sort of situation arising again. And I think probably all sides agree with that point. Thank you.
Yeah, just to endorse that recommendation again about retaining emails, and I do think that Dan made a really good point in Public Gallery about the readability of the report, and I appreciate that's not within the scope of this committee, but just to put it on record that for future reports, particularly the Barton House one that is in my ward, I'd very much prefer if it was more readable. I don't know about other members, but the way it was redacted sometimes made it very hard to follow who the investigator was talking about, and if there was another way of doing that, whether that was using fake names or fake initials or something else to make it easier to track about who was being talked about, that would have made it easier for me to follow the more detailed report, and I agree it being not suitable for screen readers is also difficult. So I would back up that request that future reports, which I appreciate, again, is not in the scope of this committee, but I think future reports across the council, there is better practice around that.
Any other committee members wishing to comment on this? Okay, so this is for us for noting, and 7:25. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of CYP meeting for today, and I hope you don't all fry on the way home. Thank you very much.